Excellent. I just want to make sure everybody has a magazine that would like one. Is there anybody that did not get one that would like to have a magazine? Maybe if someone, Brad, could help me hand out a few of those. They're just on the table there. There's plenty. Just if Brad comes by, just make sure you grab one, or someone else, or Nellie. That's great. Thank you. If the picture on the front looks a little bit like Nellie, of this little girl or her daughter, it's because this is a young girl from Bangladesh on the front cover, and that's Nellie's home country of origin. So, and then also I have here the Life-Changing Divine Appointments book. If you did not receive that, feel free to come by and pick up a copy there on those tables as you head out. So just want to look at that before you go. All right. What is the title of our afternoon seminar? We'll go back to it right here. Spiritual Conversations with Secular People. I discovered by accident that this is a very popular topic among Seventh-day Adventists. Here is how that accident happened. I used to organize the church planting conferences all around North America called Seeds. We even did international conferences as well. And at one of the events, I had scheduled a speaker who canceled at the last minute. And so teaching at the seminary, I thought, well, I have students here that are skilled, that could go and step in and present. And so I thought of one particular student. This was a Seeds that was happening in Canada. And so this is a Canadian student. And I just gave him this topic. I said, how about you speak on spiritual conversations for secular people? How about that seminar? Because I knew that this was something that he was gifted in. And so we put that on the schedule along with all the other seminars. And when we arrived there, part of what I try to do is go around and kind of pop in on each seminar to see how it's going, how many people showed up, what the interest level is, how the presenter's doing. And when I came to the room where he was at, the whole room was full and people were standing by the door. And I'm like, what has happened here? Why is this seminar so much more popular than the other seminars? It must be because of the presenter, right? No, this is a fill-in presenter. He's a student. Nobody knows who he is. So how is this topic so popular? And then I began to think, I can't take this student with me everywhere we go. We have all these events, around the world as well, and the only person that goes to all of them is me. So maybe if this topic is so popular, maybe I should prepare a seminar myself on spiritual conversations with secular people. And so I did that, but I had a dilemma. You see, I am a fifth generation Seventh-day Adventist. This photo here is at Gladstone Camp meeting in Oregon. My grandmother, my great-grandmother's in this photo. And I am born and raised Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up in Walla Walla, Washington, a community where all my friends, the school I went to, they're all Adventist. And I thought, my goodness, who am I to talk about how you can have spiritual conversations with secular people? That has not been my journey. And I say, okay, maybe my wife can talk about that. Her dad was not a Christian growing up, and she is as comfortable talking with a secular person as she is with an Adventist. And so maybe she should be the one to do this. But then I began reflecting and said, because this did not come naturally to me, I've had to learn how to do it, which means it may be easier for me to teach others that don't know how because I didn't know how. So I finally settled on the idea that maybe because I was so bad at it and had to learn how to do it, that maybe it would be okay if I did it. So we began to offer this seminar everywhere that we would have conferences or where I'd be invited to speak. And I remember in Australia, they had a hall that seated about 100 people that they had me in for this seminar. And I arrived just a few minutes before the seminar started, and there were people angry outside the seminar saying, I have a ticket and I can't get in. There were people that had taken the seats for the seminar because they wanted this presentation that didn't have tickets. And so ticketed people, and there were already people sitting down the stairs going down into the auditorium. And I thought, isn't this unusual? Then I went to another place where they had me repeat the seminar 4 times. I had another place in Latvia where it was filled with young adults, standing room only. They didn't want to wait till the second presentation on it. They want to be there for the first one. And I began to realize that Adventists want to know how to communicate with secular people because we want to make a difference. And I think some of the ways that we've been involved in sharing our faith have felt kind of awkward, and they haven't given us the results that we'd hoped for. And we'd like to know better ways to do it. Is that fair? And so that's what I want to look at with you this afternoon. And to help keep you awake right after a great lunch, I'm going to be asking you a quiz. Thank you for the wonderful lunch you orchestrated for us there. But I want to ask some questions, a quiz here to keep you awake. What restaurant did Alicia work at? Olive Garden, the Southern Cafeteria, the Golden Corral, or Dos Bros? Next question here. What do Adventists tend to share too quickly? Tofu, friendship, helping meet a personal need, or Adventist distinctives? What is a grow group? A group for parents of growing children, a small group based on hobbies and interest, or the basics of gardening class? What is your personal witnessing responsibility? Convince a person to become a vegan, add drips to the bucket, prepare to deliver a 15-minute personal testimony, or explain the 2,300 days? All right, so listen carefully to the answers to these questions. Part of what has prepared me on this topic is somewhat where God has led me in terms of where I've lived. And I had the opportunity a few years ago to move to Australia, which is ranked number 5 in the world of having the most convinced atheist. If you do not have the ability to communicate with a secular person in Australia, you are not going to see the church grow, okay? And so that's a big challenge. And so being in Australia, I learned a lot about communicating with secular people. I moved from Australia to Oregon, the number 7th most secular state in the United States. But what do you see in your territory? You see the states here in the Northeast also included as the most secular states in the United States. And I'm going to give you some statistics here that will be quite interesting. This was a study done in 2019 by Barna, just pre-COVID. Their key metrics of, and I'm including 6 of them out of the 16, of individuals who are considered to be post-Christian or secular. One is not having read the Bible in the last week. Having not attended a Christian church in the last 6 months, never have made a commitment to Jesus, have not prayed to God in the last week, disagree that faith is important in their lives, and identify themselves as an atheist or agnostic, okay? So as you look at that list, notice where the secular areas of the United States land. I see Portland and Auburn, Maine up there. 60% of the population being secular. Is Burlington, Vermont, is that in your region as well? 59%. And then you see here, then you're at Albany. Let's see here. What else is in your territory on that? Number 5 there is also in your territory. So you can see that you're probably, if you take the whole territory, more than 50% of individuals could be defined as secular, post-Christian, not having a Christian worldview. So amazing opportunities. I find it interesting that if you look at the percentage of Adventists to population, in the West we have some of the best percentages of Adventist members to population, where it's among the most secular. So I think we have a message that is appealing to a secular person. The problem is how we package it. And that has been a challenge and continues to be a challenge for us. 49% of Americans as a whole say it's somewhat or very important to attend church, which means 51% of Americans say it's not too important or not important at all. Millennials, those that are 30 and under, stand out as the least likely to value church attendance, with only 2 in 10 believing that it is important. So the world is changing, and the church has not adjusted to address the change that's going on. And so, spiritual conversations with secular people becomes a very relevant topic for us to learn. How do we engage in the society that we live in? I believe that the default that we've gone to is that we pay the postman to do evangelism for us. We have an event, we're event-driven, where we're holding some kind of a prophecy seminar, and we mail out flyers to the community hoping that people will show up. And it does have some success because the Holy Spirit is always at work. But I do not believe it is the only way that we should be trying to reach people in a secular context. So what I would love to do for you this afternoon, this is my stated goal, is I feel like, first of all, that for many of us, when we think about witnessing, when we think about sharing our faith, it feels uneasy, unnatural, uncomfortable, and possibly even unpleasant. But we love Jesus, and so we just soldier on and we continue to try. But the methods we're using make us feel this way. And sometimes because they feel this way, we just avoid it altogether. We love Jesus, but we're really not sure how do we communicate with a secular person who's not coming at things from the same direction we are. So here's my goal. This is my stated goal. I want to remove the uns this afternoon. So if we can remove the uns from these words and we talk about spiritual conversations with secular people, I would love for you by the end of this presentation to feel that this is something easy, it's natural, it's comfortable, and it's pleasant. If we can land on that, we've had a great afternoon together, and I hope that one or two of the methods that I present to you that you may have never heard of before, that you will actually go and try. Now, I was so happy this afternoon, someone approached me that right there said in 5 minutes you had a divine appointment this morning, and what was the result of it? Yes, just share maybe from right there, just project out. Yep.
As a result of that, he was able to come to know Jesus, and even he was blessed with a wife.
So you prayed for divine appointment this morning.
And so in praying, I'm actually the guy who spilled the oranges. So last night at our hotel, well, actually this morning when I woke up, our refrigerator didn't work. And so I called the front desk and asked if they could bring another refrigerator. And they had trouble getting another refrigerator, so I suggested, well, maybe you could just switch rooms. So she said, why don't you come out to the front desk? So I came out to the front desk, and I explained to her that I had just enough food to last me until sunset. I said, we believe in the seventh-day Sabbath. And she said, oh, what religion are you? And I said, well, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. And she said, I'm from Ukraine. And she said, I've heard, I actually visited a church before. Long story short, we wound up exchanging numbers. She lives in this area, and we're going to connect her to a local church here. And she's going to bring a friend with her, all within 5 minutes.
Amen. So that's the divine appointment, isn't it? And, when God orchestrates, as we talked about last night, when God orchestrates those appointments, it's because you're the right person, and God's prepared that person for that appointment with you. So that is super powerful. So here we go. I'm going to share with you let's think about a recipe. This is the recipe for having a good spiritual conversation with someone. These are the ingredients. So we're going to look at the ingredients, and then from there we're going to go into the methods. If we have the right ingredients in our recipe, we're going to be more likely to have success with the methods that we use with our divine appointment. So it'll make more sense in a moment. But the first one here is friendship. This is the universal language of all humans. Then we talk about grace, wisdom, vulnerability, and being spirit-led. So we're going to touch on each one of these, and let's begin here with friendship. So this is a recipe that we need to have as part of who we are as an individual if we are to have success in having spiritual conversations. And that is that we need to believe that all humans value friendship. And I just want to illustrate this by saying it this way. Does a young person, does a teenager need friends? Absolutely. Do older people need friends? What about everybody in between? Age is not a factor in terms of needing friends, right? Okay. How about, does an educated person need a friend? Does somebody who's uneducated need a friend? And everybody in between, right? Okay. How about a rich person? Do they need friends? Do poor people need friends? And everybody in between. How about by ethnicity? Is it only Caucasians that need friends? Do Haitians need friends? Brazilians, do they need friends? Every culture needs friends, right? How about somebody who is religious? Do they need friends? How about somebody that's unreligious or unspiritual? Does a secular person need a friend? Okay, so it's very important, it's very basic for us to accept that when we're having a conversation with someone, that the need we feel for friendship, they also feel in their lives. Is that okay? And perhaps we will be that friend that they're looking for. And so this is something I think that is super important, and I just want to share this by highlighting friendship for my family, for my wife and I, when we lived in Australia, and that's by this. These are our three neighbors in Australia that we became friends with. The first guy in the top left there, his name is Robbo. He lived up on the top of the street. We lived quite near to the largest inland saltwater lake in Australia. Coal Point was the name of the community we lived in, and he lived up above us. And he would be watching. If we forgot to take the rubbish bin out, he would call us and say, did you remember to take your rubbish bin out? And tomorrow's trash day, and we'd like, oh, thank you, we forgot. Someone would show up to our house, and he would come down quickly and ask them who they were there to see and what it was about, and would text us and say, somebody tried to come by your house. So he really was looking after us, and we built quite a nice friendship with him. He joined us for Christmas dinner in our home, along with others. And the day that we left, after being his neighbor, at one point, because we're Americans, and he's a true blue Aussie, and at one point he told us that he hoped that we would never move, that we would always be his neighbor. But on the day that we left, he came to our house, and he said, I brought a gift for you, and gave me a non-alcoholic beer, because he knew I didn't drink alcohol, but he gave me a 0.0 beer. That was his gift to me. And we chatted for a while, and then I said, Robbo, we've enjoyed so much having you as a neighbor. I just really like to pray and just thank God for the time that we've had as neighbors and for our friendship. So when we finished that prayer, Robbo said to me, well, your previous neighbors must have been blank, and let out an expletive. But it was amazing to see how warm he was and how receptive he was to our friendship. In the center is John and Dot. John, both of them are retired. He worked on his yacht out in the front yard and made his own, his own equipment for it. And we would always have friendly conversations with John and Dot. In fact, they fell in love with my wife so much that they said, we wish our son had married someone like you. And I said, well, she's already taken. But in any case, the night that we left, they had us to their home, and they just didn't want us to leave. They just wanted to visit and visit. Beck showed up to our house on Halloween. It was the first time she showed up, and she said, I don't like this holiday, so we go around giving gifts to people instead of people coming to our house. And so she was out giving gifts, and we found out that she was actually quite an accomplished vegan cook, chef, and she was an expert in vegan desserts. And so finding out that I'm vegan, she began to bring vegan desserts to our house all the time, which was great. And we actually featured her in a magazine published by the conference with a recipe that she had made. She was on the front cover with her son. I think I've got a photo of that. Right there, there it is. So this is the conference magazine. This lady who was our neighbor featured. And it enabled me to introduce her to our communication director for the conference. And they had a great connection with him and his wife and with her as well. So just tremendous connections happening over this one basic concept that we have neighbors that also want to be friends. And being a friend is one of the easiest ways to make connections with secular people. So this is a recipe, it's a change in our mind that we need to make if we're going to be effective at reaching secular people. They need friends, and we can be their friend. Okay? So that's the first ingredient. The second one here is grace. Grace is a very important ingredient that we put into this mixture in preparing to connect with secular people. Create a sense of warmth and genuine interest. We should be adding flavor to people's lives. This is the most powerful verse in Scripture about how to connect with secular people, at least the most powerful one that I found. Conduct yourself with how? Wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. How do we make the most of the opportunity? Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned, as it were, with salt, so that you may know how you should respond to each one. So this tells me this is not a cookie cutter approach where we say this is the way to do it. No, because it's saying it's customized. You need to have wisdom how to respond to each one. We're going to be using a different approach with every person. And how do we decide what that approach is going to be? The Holy Spirit will impress us, right? But it says very clearly that our speech should always be with grace. That is how we should be approaching people. The next one here is wisdom. We need to know what to share and how much. So here's the counsel here. Don't serve the whole enchilada. Now this was the enchilada that won the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest enchilada ever made. And I think we as Adventists sometimes could win that award in how we share our faith. If somebody shows interest, then they get the whole 28 fundamental beliefs, right? We feel like we've got to get it all in because we don't know if there's going to be another chance. And we've got to make the most of the opportunity. Well, that's not what is talked about here. We need to use wisdom when we connect with people. And in that wisdom, the Holy Spirit will show us how much to share and when to share. And that is super important. We don't want to give people spiritual indigestion. The next one here is vulnerability. Be real about challenges and mistakes. A secular person does not like very much somebody who's always right, who pretend like they've got it all together. They want someone that they can relate to. I was getting my hair cut in Niles, Michigan, just down the road from Andrews University. And you know, I would say some of the divine appointments I've had have been around getting my hair cut. I mean, you're sitting there with someone and you have a chance to have a conversation, but this lady was asking me one question after another. And I told her I was teaching at Andrews University and she didn't seem to know where it was. And I'm thinking, how is this even possible? You know, this is a very rural area. I mean, everybody in Niles, Michigan knows where Andrews University is. But she didn't seem to have a clue where it was. And she just kept asking me all these questions. And then finally she asked me a question I didn't want to answer because it involved being vulnerable. You know, I didn't have my life all together, you know, with the question she asked me. And so I just said a quick prayer, just asked God, should I share with her? Should I keep going in this conversation? And the clear answer is yes. And so I began to open up a little bit of myself to her. The moment I did, she said, I used to be a Seventh-day Adventist. But I was kicked out of the church because I got pregnant. And I'm like, wow. She said, but you know, there's a young lady, a friend, that stayed in touch with me all these years. And she's been a real friend to me. And I said to her, you know, as we continue the conversation, I said, well, what's the next step for you? And she said, well, my schedule's going to be changing with my work, and I'm going to go back to church. And so it was really a revelation to me that if I had not been vulnerable, if I had not been real to her, if I'd acted like I had it all together, holier than thou kind of thing, nobody likes people like that. You don't like people like that. So it's not effective with secular people at all. So be real. Be real. You know, don't act like your marriage is perfect, you know. That's not going to impress them. Say, hey, we're committed, but we have our challenges, right? There are days where I'd rather be somewhere else. But we're committed to each other, you know? So that authenticity is something that a secular person will relate to much better. The next one here is spirit-led. And that was our whole conversation yesterday evening about divine appointments. Divine appointments will intersect your path with the right person. I want to share a story about this one with, this is Alicia. I was traveling with a group of pastors, of guys from Australia, and we toured all the way down from Florida and drove all the way up to Andrews and stopped in along the way, different places. And these guys had in their mind that they wanted to go to a Golden Corral, and I resisted because it's a buffet, and I didn't want to go there. So anyway, they kept pushing the idea they want to go to Golden Corral. So I said, okay, we will give them an American cultural experience. And from the moment we turned up there, one of them thought, well, we better turn around and go back. But, some are better than others. So I've been to a few that I like. But anyway, we show up there, and the lady who is helping us, basically they bring you your drinks and your plates, and you do the rest, right? So I had been out of the States for a little while, and I was curious, what is the practice of tipping at Golden Corral? Do you know what it is? Are you clear on that? Where you get your own food, right? It's kind of like, do you really tip or do you not? Or what? How does this work? So I went over and asked another server and said, how does tipping work at Golden Corral? And she said, just like any other restaurant, we get paid $2.13 an hour. We depend on tips to survive. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This would be the worst job ever to take because people aren't clear whether you tip or not. So I called Alicia over to our table and I said, is it true you just get $2.13 an hour? She said, yeah, and I've had 5 tables today that haven't tipped me anything. And she said, I'm a single mom with 5 kids and I'm just barely surviving. So we began to have a conversation with Alicia, a group of pastors there. We said, we want to pray with you. I mean, her heart was touched, tears. And we left her with, I think, a $93 tip between us. But we had a conversation about God, about church, about her journey in life, and I shared with her that I believe God wanted her to be the one to take care of us that day, and we wanted to bless her in her life. But again, divine appointments are how God intersects us with secular people so that we can practice these things of wisdom and all these other things we talked about. Okay, so if you want to pick up that book you didn't last night, as I mentioned, this helps us with our adoption. Pick it up at the table as you go. And anything that you donate to help with our adoption and get the book is doubled because we have a grant for that. Okay, so let's now move into these are the methods that we will use to connect with people. But remember, we have to have the recipe in place so that these will be effective. We need to know that people need friendship. We need to use grace, wisdom. Don't serve the whole enchilada. Divine appointments, all those things need to come together. And when they do, now we're going to talk about very specific methods of connecting with people. So we've looked at these essential elements. Here are the methods, and we'll start with number one. Number one, which is coaching. And we will get to each of these so you can catch all these as we go. So here's the first one. This is my preferred airline and my preferred approach to flying. I don't prefer to fall asleep on the shoulder of the person next to me, but I do like to take a nap sometimes when I fly. Well, on this particular flight, the guy that sat down with me had no intention of letting me get a nap. He wanted to talk. And so we began to connect. His name's Jay. He's 27 years old. He's single, and he's beginning his accounting career. So I'm learning lots of things about Jay on this flight already. He is headed for a guy's weekend. Anybody know what happens on a guy's weekend? Yes, sir. Name one thing. There's probably 3 core things that happen on a guy's weekend. None of you have ever had a guy's weekend. All right, well, that's just as well. I don't know that as I shared with you, the way I grew up, this is probably not something that I'm the best one equipped to do this, but I'm learning how do we connect with secular people. So number 1 is alcohol, okay? Number 2 is girls. Number 3 is sports, probably in that order, or maybe sports then girls. But anyway, that's a guy's weekend, okay? He's headed for this guy's weekend. He said he laughs at jokes that he wouldn't if he was serious. Now that's an interesting comment coming from this guy. He shares with me that he has a drinking problem, that he grew up in a broken home, And he thinks it strange that his current girlfriend is a committed Christian, as was his last girlfriend. So we're having a very interesting conversation, aren't we? When I got off the plane, the guy I was traveling with said, "Tom, you were in some kind of deep conversation with that guy." And you'll see where this goes. It was absolutely incredible where this went. So what approach am I going to take with Jay? Am I going to say this? Let me share with you about the Sabbath because he needs rest. How many think that's the place to start with Jay? Okay. How about saying you should find a Seventh-day Adventist church because he needs God in his life? How about this one? Did you know your body's the temple of the Holy Spirit, so you should give up alcohol? Friends, when these are the approaches we take because that's what we know and what we think we should be doing, it's no wonder we don't get results. We turn people away, actually. And we don't want to do that. But we do want to share our faith. So how do we go about it? Well, let me share with you how bad I was at this so that you can feel better because you're better than I was at it, okay? I was so bad. I was 19 years old, headed to New Bowl College to spend a year studying abroad. It's my dream. And I happened to be seated right next to a Catholic priest. Now, he's not a secular person, but very different belief system than me. And I want to share my faith with this Catholic priest. So I begin going through in my mind, which doctrine shall I start with? And I finally landed, I'm going to go on this. This is a rock solid one for us. I'm going to go on the state of the dead. So I start in with the Bible study with this Catholic priest on the state of the dead. Within a minute or two, he hit his call button. The stewardess comes and he said, "Ma'am, can I ask to be reseated?" So epic fail, right? It was so bad. I can't even believe, I look back and say, I can't believe I was so bad at sharing my faith, so to speak, right? Had a lot to learn. So here's a 90-minute flight. Jay wants to talk. I'm not going to be getting a nap. What approach will I take, and what do I hope the outcome will be? So share with somebody next to you, what approach should I take with Jay, and what's the end result of a 90-minute conversation? What's it going to be? All right, so go ahead and share with the person next to you. Okay, let's come back together. So if we go back to those core ingredients, Jay's wanting to be a friend. He's wanting to be friendly, right? And that's very clear. One of those principles is the Holy Spirit needs to be guiding, giving wisdom. I need to show grace in the conversation as I have it with him. So I landed on a decision that was very risky. It was an experiment. And I want to encourage you to try this experiment sometime. I decided that I was going to coach Jay. Now, coaching is asking open-ended, powerful questions based on what Jay is saying. I'm going to ask questions based on goals that he sets, not some vision I have for his life, but goals that he's setting for his life. And I'm into the conversation, I'm hoping that Jay will identify one or two steps that he wants to take in his life. But he's the one that decides. I'm not coming at him with my preconceived idea of where this conversation needs to go. I'm going to let the Holy Spirit lead the conversation, and I'm just going to ask questions. All right? So that's the decision I made. I had done this with pastors many times, with church leaders, sitting down and coaching, so to speak. I mean, you can get certified as a life coach, which I have, and other things, but basically the idea is just ask good questions, and people will respond. So here we go. This is where I started with Jay. A basis of coaching is curiosity, showing interest, curiosity. So here we go. First question, why do you think you keep finding Christian girls to date? Was that off limits, or did he give me permission to ask that question? He told me. He's confused. Why is it he always finds Christian girls? So why can't I ask him that question? So it's based on something he's saying. I'm not judging him on it. I'm just asking. Why do you? And he said, maybe they have something in their lives that I'm looking for in my life. Wow. Okay, that opened another door, didn't it? So here comes the next question. Jay, where would you like to be in your life spiritually? He opened the door, right? I just continued to walk down the path and ask questions. He said, Tom, this is where I'm at, and this is where I'd like to be. There's some distance there, right? So I said, Jay, what would it take to get from here to there? Well, then he got very silent, quiet, very serious. He said, Tom, I'm afraid it would take a crisis to happen in my life for me to get serious with God. I said, Jay, you just told me, because we want to repeat back what we're hearing him say, right? You just told me it would take a crisis in your life to get serious with God. How does that make you feel? He said, it makes me feel scared. We continued our conversation for quite a while. The plane is beginning to land, and so I need to land this conversation, okay? And so there's always two questions I want to ask in wrapping up a coaching conversation with somebody. The first one is an accountability question. Jay's told me he wants to get closer to God in his life. As we've journeyed, it seemed, and further in that conversation, it's very clear that he wants to get serious with God. So I asked him this question, Jay, who can help you reach your goal? Now, this is a very important question because it highlights the difference between us giving advice and coaching. It's very different. If I were giving Jay advice, what would I say at this moment? Who's going to help you? Who's going to help Jay from my perspective, from my opinion? His girlfriend. His girlfriend's a Christian. She's serious with God. That's the closest person to him. It's the only one I've heard about that he's told me has a relationship with God. And I could say to Jay, hey, maybe your girlfriend would be happy to help you on your spiritual journey and getting closer to God. I could give that advice. But when I'm coaching, I don't give advice. I ask questions. And so I said, Jay, who can help you reach your goal? No hesitation. My mom. I'm like, where did that come from? And I was so glad that I was coaching him instead of giving advice. And he said, my mom over the last several months has become really serious with God, and I think she would love to help me get closer to God. So I said, okay, Jay, when do you want to approach your mom to ask her for help? And he said, after the guys' weekend. I said, okay, Jay, okay, I get it. But I said, Jay, you know that we have an enemy. There's an enemy that doesn't want you to pursue a relationship with God. And I'm going to pray that God will protect you during this guy's weekend so you can get to where you want to be with God. So that's where we left the conversation. So how do you think Jay felt about the conversation? We had a 90-minute conversation. First of all, I felt great about it, but how do you think Jay felt about it? Well, let me share with you what Jay did, okay? I need to find Jay right down here. All right. Come on, Mark, you're going to be Jay. Come on up. All right. All right, so Jay, we're on the airplane here together. Go ahead and have a seat. You're there. I always get an aisle seat if I can. So here we go. I'm on the aisle seat. Well, actually, I'm going to be Jay, so you be me, okay? So we're going to switch places. All right, here we go. So Jay's sitting here, and we finished the conversation. The plane landed. Wow. Thanks for that conversation. That was so helpful. Wow. Okay. All right, now we get up. Okay, now we get up. We're standing in the aisle of the airplane here. Getting the bags. We're getting our bags, right? Man, that was such a helpful conversation. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
All right, now we're walking off the plane together. Okay, we exit the plane. We're walking out into the airport. Man, I'm so glad I met you. That was such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
All right, appreciate it, Mark. It was, and the key phrase he said to me is, thank you for helping me get closer to where I want to be in my life. I mean, this is such a blessing to have this kind of experience and engaging with people. It's refreshing. They feel good about it. You feel good about it. And I've just really found that coaching is something that's biblical and is something that we should be involved in if we want to engage with secular people. What is that in your hand? God asked Moses. Not because he didn't know what was in his hand, but because God wanted that interaction. He wanted to see where Moses was coming from with it. All right. Next one here is culture. Ignite connections through identifying, showing interest in their cultural heritage. This is one of my favorites. It's my kind of almost my first go-to in having a spiritual conversation with a secular person. So here we go.
See a picture of the
Okay, so the question is, what food in what country? What? Who said that? Oh my goodness, this is the first time this has ever happened. I've done this seminar around the world, and you're the first time. That's the first one out. Trini Doubles from Trinidad and Tobago. Is that where you're from? That is awesome. Yes. Well done. That is great. So I was invited to teach a class there at the university, and I want to go out on the street and see what do people eat here? How do they spend their time? So I got one of your malt drinks as well, and had my Trini Doubles. And during the break, during class, I would go out and play cricket with them. And I found out that one of my students was an expert on the steel drum. So I invited her to come play steel drum for the class, and I'm video recording to send back to my family to see it. People love their culture. Even if the country they're from has brokenness, even if there's political corruption, they still love their culture. My wife is Brazilian, and I've had to learn that everything with onions and garlic is better. And I really appreciate that. But if you can connect with people on their cultural level, there's absolutely an immediate bond that can take place, that can connect you and you can relate with at a whole different level. And those students were much more ready to listen to what I had to share in class when they know that I appreciated where they're coming from, who they are, and their experiences. The more I could put myself and immerse myself into that, the better. I remember the experience of flying into Mexico City to speak for a division event there. They wanted my entire PowerPoint ahead of time, and I basically landed, went from the airport to basically go speak. And I didn't have a chance to immerse myself in that culture first, contextualize my presentation, and be able to relate in that way. And I felt so out of my armor in doing that, because whenever you can do that, it's so much more relevant. You notice how Ted Wilson today referred multiple times to northern New England and your territory here and his connection with your territory here. That's an immediate bond and connection that you can make. One of our team members was born in Maine, and guess who I'm going to send up for a speaking appointment that I booked up with someone here? I'm going to send him because this is where he was born, and that's going to be an immediate connection. So again, super important to connect by culture. I learned to do this in Australia by eating Marmite or Vegemite and learning to put that on my toast. And this is so popular there. Sanitarium, an Adventist company, makes their own version of this. But when the pastors see me voluntarily in line to put Marmite on my bread or Vegemite, it communicates something, right? That I'm immersing myself in their culture, and it can be super powerful. Let me share with you what that looks like for a spiritual conversation. We were at the beach in St. Joseph, Michigan, and my wife was engaged in a conversation with a lady by the name of Monica. My wife commented how well our kids were playing together. And she reflected back. She said, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they're just getting along so well. I noticed that Monica had an accent, and she was speaking to her mom in a different language. And so my mind immediately goes to the cultural connection. Where are they from originally? What kind of connection can we make in this way? And so I asked the question, where are you guys from? And her immediate response was Chicago. Well, Chicago's right across the lake. So what do I do now? That's a dead end, right? where do I go with this conversation? Because I thought culture was going to be such a great connection point. Well, when she said Chicago, my mind went immediately to a culture that is a European culture that is present in Chicago and has the highest population outside of the major city in that country of this particular people group. Mark, which ethnic group is this? Polish, absolutely. See, Mark knew it right away. He would be a perfect person to have a conversation with this lady, right? But I wanted to get there when she said Chicago because I have a very good friend who's Polish. And I had some different connections that I could talk about related to what I learned about culture in Poland from that friend. And so I said, where from before Chicago? And it came out that it was Poland. So at the end of the time there at the beach, my wife exchanged phone numbers with Monica. Why? Because our kids play together so well. But the cultural connection helped also. 9 months later, so we were at the end of summer season. They have a beach house there in St. Joseph, evidently. End of the summer season, beginning of the summer season, 9 months later, we're driving home, and my wife gets a phone call, and she said, Tom, it's Monica from the beach. We're like, what? 9 months later, she's calling us up. She said, hey, we're back in town. We'd love to get together. So my wife said, hey, come over to our house. I'll cook some Brazilian food for you. And so they're on their way to our house with her husband and with her daughter. And so as they walk in the door, they have a bottle of what to give us? Bottle of wine. We need to be prepared for these things. And so we said, thank you very much. We put it on the back of the counter. And by the time she left, she realized that we don't drink wine. And we said, well, we know where you got it. They'll take care of us with some fruit or something, or exchange it or something. So anyway, it was all okay. But amazing conversation with them there in our home, because of the connection with our kids and then the cultural connection that came with that as well. What's the biblical basis? Therefore, the one who you worship, without knowing him I proclaim to you. I just imagine Paul going through that city there in Athens and wondering, how am I going to connect with the people here? He was looking for that connection point. And I think when we interact with people, we need to be looking for what is the connection point that we can bring to this conversation. The lady from Ukraine, I can share with her that Child Impact offered Project Safe Passage from the Ukraine border into Germany and Austria for women and children, and that we're hurting for her and her people as they're suffering right now in Ukraine. This is something that we can share, we can relate to. And the more connections we can have with people and their cultures, the better. Did you know that Nellie is from Bangladesh? It's our largest country we work in Child Impact in terms of children that we sponsor. I have a whole new understanding of the culture that Nellie's family originally came from by having been in Bangladesh. And so these are things that we want to, begin to connect with people on. All right, next one here. This is the one that my guess is that you have never, ever tried before. And it might be the most effective of all 5 methods that I'm going to talk with you. And that is to ask a favor. Flip the script when they are asked to contribute their gifts and their talents. I'm going to unpack this for you. What happens when we think that we are the only ones to have something to offer? What does that relationship look like? Yeah, it can look like, charity, that they're the ones that, aren't doing well in their life and we've got it together, so we're the only ones that have something to give. That's not a very fun relationship, is it, for people? They don't want that. And so when we ask for them a favor from them, it totally changes, completely changes the dynamic of that friendship. And so I want to share with you about our neighbors in Texas. As far as I'm aware, church has never been part of their lives. They happily married, but they never had children. But I first met them because they were advertising free kittens. And we had moved to 15 acres in the country and needed some farm cats. And so we turned in their driveway, responding to the sign for free kittens. And I remember asking God as we pulled in the driveway, do you want something more from this than just free kittens? These are our neighbors. This is a dine-in divine appointment, right? Not a drive-through one, like we talked about last night. So, God, do you want something more for this? Well, when they found out that we were their new neighbors, they invited us into their home immediately, and we began to just visit, have a friendly conversation, discovered that they were organic vegetable growers and sold produce to like Whole Foods and these kind of places. And I was fascinated by that because I grew up gardening in the Pacific Northwest. And so I asked a very simple question. Jackie, this is the husband, I said, would you be willing to do me a favor? Can you teach me, can you show me how to have a really good garden in Texas? Because the climate here is very different than how I grew up gardening. He said, you bet, I'd be happy to do that. He jumps up and disappears. Then he comes walking back in with all these bags of organic seeds. Oh, do you like okra? Man, I love okra. Do you like cantaloupe? Do you like this? Do you like that? And he starts giving me all these seeds. And then he stops and he said, wait a second. Do you have a garden area prepared yet? And I said, well, no, I don't. We've just moved there. And he said, Tom, I'm going to bring my tractor over and I will till you up a garden area. So this is Jackie getting my garden area ready. I had a massive garden. I mean, this was huge. We had so much okra and cantaloupe and amazing garden and his wife brought over a pie. This began an incredible friendship with Jackie and Cindy and a spiritual friendship with them. I remember one day walking, because I would show up to their house quite often. I loved looking at their garden and interacting with them. And one day when I showed up, I noticed that their retention pond was almost dry, where they pump water for their fields. We'd been in a drought for some time in Texas. And I said, Jackie, Cindy, this isn't looking good. What's going on? They said, Tom, if we don't get rain, we're going to lose our crops. This is their livelihood. I said, Jackie, Cindy, we need to pray to the God of heaven to send rain. They were so desperate for rain that they held hands with me in the middle of the field, and we prayed earnestly, God, please send rain, or they're going to lose their crops. This is how they survive. They're dependent on this. God, please send rain. Well, for the next several weeks, I traveled to different churches, and my kids would, during prayer request time for churches that had that, they would say, Jackie and Cindy, that they'll get rain for their gardens, for their crops. So it was several weeks later before I showed back up to their house. This time I noticed the retention pond was looking pretty good. I noticed a very different demeanor from Jackie and Cindy. In fact, they were glowing and they were beaming. And they said, Tom, we got just the right amount of rain at just the right time. And in fact, we have had a bumper crop. I said, Jackie and Cindy, you know who we need to praise for that. We need to be praising the God of heaven for sending you that rain. Now, please do not ask me to pray for your crops. But I believe God answered my desperate prayer at that moment for these people that had been on a journey and were our friends. And God honored and answered that prayer, because it is possible that rain can come in one place and not another, and can fall in some places and not another. And God bless him, and we could give him the credit for answering that prayer. What's the biblical basis for asking a favor? It's as obvious, and it's sitting there in Scripture as clear as can be. Jesus saying to the Samaritan woman, will you give me a drink? I can tell you that if you try this, if you ask a secular person for a favor in their area of passion, their area of skill, their area of interest, don't over ask. Expect a mechanic to give you free car work. That's not what I'm talking about here, okay? We need to be fair in how we treat people. But if there's something that you want to learn, something that you need some help with, and you tap into their passion, to their interest, to their skill, it will totally change your relationship with them. Next one here, hobbies. Common hobbies break down barriers and create an immediate bond. My family and I, for many years, raised English cream golden retrievers. And whenever I get into something, I want to be the best at it. I kind of have this competitive streak in me that I've had since I was a kid. And so I didn't want to just raise regular golden retrievers. I want to raise the best ones I possibly could. And so I'm like, where are the best golden retrievers in the world? Well, they're in Europe, and for the English style. And so, well, who's the best breeder there? And I began to research, and I found this lady by the name of Sue Brown, who had a male stud dog that had produced the most champions in Europe 3 years running, this male dog. And so I'm like, I want to buy a puppy from Sue Brown. But you would not know this, but there is a prejudice against selling to Americans because Americans aren't as worried about breeding for the quality, the pure bloodlines, showing the dogs, getting all their health clearances and tests done. There are lots of reasons why a European does not want to sell to an American unless they know them, unless they can trust them. So on my first trip over to England, I made an appointment, and I was there for speaking appointments different times with the work I do, and so I would just make a point to see Sue Brown every time I traveled to England. So my first appointment with Sue Brown, I said, Sue, would you consider selling me a puppy? She said, Tom, I'll think about it. Wow, that was good because it wasn't a no. I was like, wow, this is really good. So on my next trip out, I stopped in to see Sue Brown again, and I said, would you consider selling me a puppy? And she said, okay, Tom, I will put you on the waiting list. And I said, well, could you put me on the waiting list for 2? So I'm being very bold in my request. And she said, okay, I'll put you on the waiting list for 2. So here's my third trip over to meet Sue Brown, where I'm getting these puppies. Well, during this time, there's a friendship that I begin to develop with Sue and her husband and Sue's mother that lives with them. So she said, you know what, Tom? Next time you come to England, just come stay with us. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So on my next trip over, I stay with Sue and her husband, and they want to give me a tour of their local community, and of course they show me the cathedral because she knew that I was a pastor and involved in spiritual things. So we're in the cathedral, and Sue's husband's kind of looking around a bit, and Sue approaches me to the side, and she said, Tom, my husband would never come in a place like this, but we know you like these things, and so we wanted to show it to you. Well, then I ended up going to church while I was there, and she wanted to pack a lunch for me. I said, don't worry, they'll have lunch for me. Guess what? They didn't. But in any case, really began a friendship, and she actually took me to the Crufts Dog Show with her. And I was able to get in early, and I was able to carry her bags in, and here she's winning, in these classes at Crufts, the biggest the biggest dog show in the world, 28,000 dogs and 160,000 visitors. So I was able to go there as Sue's right-hand man, right to the edge of the show ring and see her dog, placing in these classes and stuff. It was an amazing experience. Sue and her husband flew to America and stayed in our home. What was that common connection that we had? It was a hobby. Whatever hobby you have, secular people also have that hobby. Is that true? Okay, some of you share with me your hobby, just quickly, just the hobby, so we don't need a microphone. What? Golfing? Excellent. We live on a golf course. I love golfing too. You're much better than me, I'm sure. I need a mulligan. I need a mulligan too often. Yes, sir. Did you raise your hand for a hobby? Anybody with a hobby? Mark, what's your hobby? Astronomy, not astrology. That's good. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes. Guitar. Okay. Do you have acoustic? What's your brand you like the most? Ovation. Okay, very good. Excellent. Anybody else? Hobby? Gym? Working out? Okay. Bench pressing? Okay. So you're armed and dangerous underneath your jacket there. Okay. We had a pastor in Texas, I used to call him Titanium. Because, he didn't look that big, but you felt his arms, it was like solid rock. Do you remember Titanium? He's executive secretary now. Got to watch out. Okay, anybody else? Their hobby? Quilting, excellent. Very good. Anybody else that has a hobby? Hobbies bring joy to our lives. But there are secular people also who enjoy those hobbies and might as well do them with secular people, right? And enjoy those hobbies together with them. All right, so what is your hobby? Some churches have used hobbies as a way to grow their church through small groups. And they will have groups, hobby groups, introduction to photography. On our team at Child Impact is Jasper Arturiaga. He's been featured 5 times by National Geographic. And he's a tremendous photographer. And I imagine anybody, he's built relationships all over the world with his photography skills. A cycling group, a Get Fit, there's for our gym guy right there. Indonesian Delight, a cooking class, all right? Self-defense basics, touch football, bookbinding. One of the pastor that I believe is baptizing more people than any other church and pastor in the United States is in the Carolina Conference, and he is having dodgeball. He said it used to be that kids would be able to play, kind of basketball and some sports, but that takes skills. He said anybody can play dodgeball. All you have to do is throw the ball and get hit or dodge it, right? So he's opened up his gym to play dodgeball and baptizing people doing that. So we can take these things and connect with people, whether we do it as a group at the church and invite community people to come, or we simply have these divine appointments and have these conversations and get involved in people with our hobbies. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. That connection of the hobby, the career actually of fishing that a number of the disciples had was a connection point that Jesus made with them on a regular basis. All right. So this one is an area that I've just added. And again, I'm saying I'm learning how to have conversations with secular people. And this is a new 5th category. Did not used to be here. I used to have 5 ingredients and 4 methods. But this one has become so effective. Let me just share with you a text that I got since I've been here. It was on Friday this text came in. This is from somebody who went on the mission trip with us. And she sent me this text. So this is a lady who is not an Adventist. She was on our mission trip. And she said this, flying back from this trip in Tanzania that we're just on. Could you believe that one of the flight attendants heard me telling someone about Tanzania and Child Impact, and I had to give her one of the magazines I have, and she says she'll get in touch with Child Impact and find a way to help the mission. She was so moved when I talked to her for a few minutes that I decided to give her a scarf. I took my scarf off and put it on her neck, and she had tears in her eyes. So this was a scarf she got in Tanzania, right? Wow, I knew people here would be interested. Her name is, phone number, email, just in case someone wants to make contact. I gave her my scarf that I was wearing. I just bought from Tanzania for her to remember Child Impact every time she wears it. That's a cause. That's the idea of a cause. People become very passionate about causes that they support and causes that they believe in. And I did not realize, I've spent my entire professional years as a pastor working in the denomination for the church. And when I shifted to Child Impact, where we're involved in humanitarian projects, yes, we send kids to Adventist mission schools, but we're fighting human trafficking and some of these things. The relational connections have got off the charts. And I'm like, whoa, I did not realize that these kind of connections are possible. Let me share with you 2 people that I've connected with because of the cause that we're involved in. Well, here we are. This is on the Ukraine border with one of our board members. Let me come back to that in a moment. These are two people that I met that also were very passionate about what we're doing. You may not know them, but have any of you heard of the piano guy? Some of you heard of the piano guy. He's very famous. Well, on his team is the cello guy. And we met the cello guy on the border of Botswana. And my wife is there in the middle. She met his wife in the ladies' bathroom and began talking about Child Impact because she was wondering, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Well, we're here to go on safari. My wife's saying, well, we're here because we fight human trafficking. What? You fight human trafficking? And next thing you know is someone in our group, while my wife was in there visiting with the cello guy's wife in the restroom, someone from our group had recognized this guy and said, that's a famous person. I don't know who it is. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know who it is. And so she said, I got to go meet him. We said, go talk with him. Go talk with him. You're so sure this is a famous guy. She said, I just don't remember. And so she walked up to him and said, I recognize you from somewhere. And so he did a cello pose or something like that. She said, yeah, I know you are. And so it was just a great connection. But it was this cause of fighting human trafficking and why we were there that he immediately resonated with and connected with. And him and his wife both. The next picture is a guy by the name of Waka Flocka Flame. He is a rapper who sings explicit songs. A friendship was made with him by someone who is very passionate about Child Impact at the Collegedale Community Church and the work that we do. And so he was telling Waka Flocka Flame about the work that Child Impact does and invited him actually to come to church at Collegedale Community. So he flew in with Pachan, a friend of his, who's also in the music industry, and they both show up to church on Sabbath morning at Collegedale Community Church. Well, this is a very big church, very big Adventist church, and there's always a couple police officers there for security and all this. And so I knew that he was going to be coming to church. And so I approached the police officers and I said, Waka Flocka Flame is going to be at church today. They're like, no way. That's not possible. No, that can't be true. I said, no, it's true. You'll see, he's going to be here. So sure enough, he walks in, and I felt so happy he showed up because I had already got the police officers excited. They walked in, they marched right down into church. I was up in the balcony, got a picture of where they were sitting down below. Well, by the time church was over, everybody knew this guy had shown up at church, and they were surrounding him. But our friend wanted him to, we had a booth that day set up for Child Impact, and he came by, wanted one of our wristbands, put it on, said Operation Child Rescue. And I was just talking with him and talking about how we really work with vulnerable children. And he made a comment to me. He said, Tom, aren't all children vulnerable? I said, you're right. And he said, I wish there was somebody that was looking out for me like you guys are doing for these kids. He said, I would have had a different path in my life. He said he can't even listen to some of the music that he once has written and performed because of this spiritual journey that he's going on. He's been awarded as a philanthropist for being generous with donations. We're still waiting for that donation at Child Impact. But it's been amazing, the connections. And I got, do any of you know who, is it RFK Jr. that's running for president? I just got a message that he knows about Child Impact and wants to have a conversation with me. I mean, you don't know where this will go. And I don't know, it was supposed to be yesterday that we were working on. They didn't want me to try to connect while I was in Tanzania, but this will be something that we'll look at connecting, and probably if that's a real conversation that he wants, I'll probably try to fly up and meet with him and see what it is he wants. I believe that anybody that wants to help God's work move forward, we're happy to take their donation. We're happy to see their influence. We have a runner-up for Miss Washington, D.C., who's going to be traveling to Zambia with us, and will be part of a recording there with the girls that have been rescued from sex trafficking. So anyway, there's just so many opportunities that come related to a cause. And I want to share with you one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about this, that we're wrapping up. It's a very short video here. There you go. Simeon is a boy that my family has been sponsoring here in Bangladesh. And he traveled from where he lives to the big city in Dhaka to spend the day with me. And so we got to walk on the streets. We got to experience many things. For him, it was the first time to do that. And we got to spoil him just a little bit. We got a little bit of sugarcane juice for him to drink there on the street, and bought him a special treat. And then I wanted to get him a soccer jersey for his favorite team. And of course, Argentina that just won the World Cup, his favorite player is Messi, and so we were able to get him a shirt. And able to kick a ball around a little bit, ride around in a rickshaw, and it was just an amazing experience. As I interacted with Simeon, I discovered that he has 4 siblings, but 2 of them tragically have passed away due to sickness. And then our sponsorship coordinator here in this country let me know that part of the funds that Child Impact sends to support these children provides some basic medical care, and in exceptional circumstances, they contact our office for additional help. So I wondered what would have happened, what would the difference have been in the outcome had Simeon's brothers been sponsored in one of our schools. I have not really thought about sponsorship being a life and death circumstance before, but as I reflected on this personal story with a child that I am sponsoring, that my family sponsored, and his journey, I had to recognize that sponsorship does mean life and death in many cases for these children. Back in the United States, I selected Simeon based on a photo and profile. This profile shared with me certain things about what grade he's in, what school he goes to, how old he is, and even a little bit about his family. But what a different experience to meet him firsthand, to be able to put my arm around his shoulder, to be able to go and experience things with him for the very first time. And I see that sponsorship is real, that real lives are impacted. It was such a joy to spend the day with Simeon and to bring this little piece of joy to his life and know that even though I'm half a world apart, that it can be making a difference in the life of a child in such a significant way. Okay. It was a powerful experience. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless as this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress. We have children here for sponsorship. I hope that all of them get sponsored today. Some of you can sponsor more than one child. Our family sponsors 3. My mom, who's a retiree, sponsors 4 children. We had somebody call our office the other day and said, "Is it okay if I sponsor 13 more children?" We said, "Of course." That took her total to 50 children that she sponsors. So God has given some resources to be able to do that. But I want to encourage you to come by, talk with me if you'd like to get more children than the ones I have available here today. But I can tell you, being involved in a cause opens up doors for spiritual conversations in a powerful way. I'm going to wrap with this. What is your personal witnessing responsibility? That was one of the quiz questions, right? I believe it is to add drips to the bucket. If we think about the human heart as a bucket that needs to be filled to overflowing when somebody accepts Jesus, we definitely don't want to be drying that bucket up. We want to be adding drips to the bucket. And Paul says this, "I planted, Apollos watered, God is the one that gives the increase." Ultimately, the Holy Spirit is the one that leads the human heart to make a decision. But that decision comes as a result of many different individuals, through divine appointments, through God's interaction with their life, contributing to that person's spiritual journey. This is a young man in Australia. His name's Hayden. Here's his baptism. And I just use this very simple illustration to share this with you. These 3 individuals were all very instrumental in Hayden's decision to be baptized. The person on the left is his chaplain and Bible teacher at his school. The person right next to him is his father. The person on the right is my best friend John Boston, who is the school evangelist who came and asked Hayden to make a decision. All of them were involved in filling that bucket up to overflowing where this young man made his decision. And that is the case for every single one of us. Every one of you who made a decision for Jesus is because over time your bucket became full to overflowing. And so that is our responsibility for witnessing. So what restaurant did Alicia work at? Golden Corral. What do Adventists tend to share too quickly? Tofu. Probably Adventist distinctives, a little too quickly. We need to get there, but maybe not too fast. Next one here, what is a grow group? It's a small group based on hobbies and interest. And what is your personal witnessing responsibility? Adding drips to the bucket. All right. I hope now that you can look at spiritual conversations with secular people as being easy, natural, comfortable, and pleasant. All right. I'm happy to take any questions you might have for a few minutes. I think you're going to facilitate that, or are we done?
Well, we'll get a bonus round.
Bonus round.